Okay, my talk is entitled Building Workplace Power Through Community Organising. And I think it's very important that we understand that we're not simply abandoning traditional trade union organising and chasing some sense of community solution that's going to come and solve all of our problems. We're talking about working both with communities but also with our own members. Just a little bit about the TSSA. Primarily we represent rail and tube workers. We also represent people in the travel trade and so on, but that's our main focus. And currently we are facing ideologically driven cuts. There's no doubt about it. The ticket office campaigns that we're fighting to protect our members' jobs are as a direct result of cuts to the subsidy to public transport. And we believe that public transport is a public service, and it's also part of maintaining a green economy, because if you take public transport away and you slash it, what you do is you drive people into private transport, into cars and so on. We're currently involved in 3 very difficult campaigns on the London Underground, on the East Coast Main Line and London Midland, and they're all about taking staff off the platforms, those people who sell tickets, those people who assist the passengers at the same time. On London Underground, some of you will know that in association with the RMT, the other rail union on the Underground, we had a dispute, it's an ongoing dispute, but towards the end of last year we had 4 days of strike action. And the RMT and the TSSA have never struck before together on the Underground. They were incredibly successful disputes. The total savings that the employer aimed to make per year through implementing cuts of 800 people on the platforms, they lost every single day there was a strike. 50 million was lost each day. But it wasn't enough, because these were ideologically driven cuts. And the employer sat across from us and said, we have been told from Downing Street, we are not to give in. That was the challenge we faced and still face, and many other trade unions will face very similar problems. So, the good news is, despite that difficult situation, leverage is available. On the London Underground alone, there are 1 billion journeys every year. Those are our natural allies. Passengers who are being hit not just by cuts in the service, not just in difficulties if their Oyster card isn't working to find somebody who's able to resolve it, but also that there are going to be above inflation, 3% above inflation fare rises every year. They're being charged more to receive less, and in our experience, they're not happy about that at all. And let's just be clear, next year there will be a mayoral election. I believe that the Labour candidate is called Ken Livingstone. And from my memory, ever since the 70s, Ken has been completely identified with an efficient public transport system fit for London. Public transport and fares and staffing on the Underground will be an issue in 2012. And most interestingly, of course, it'll be interesting for that Tory donut, those outer London boroughs where people use the tube to get into work, but actually tend to vote for people other than the Labour Party. We want to mobilise those people as part of an anti-cuts coalition against the cuts on the Underground and the transport service. So our strategic approach that we're evolving is to link our industrial strategy with the aspirations of passengers. And we've already done this over a number of years in terms of inviting passengers to sign petitions. We've been leafleting outside tube stations and so on. On the overground, the train operating companies, when they want to cut ticket office hours and so on, there's a public consultation process they have to go through. And we've always gone out to passengers and said, if you're not happy about having your service cut, then this is a process you should be engaged in. So it's something we've been doing for a number of years, but we're stepping up our game. The other issue, of course, is that actually taking people off the platforms affects not only people's actual physical safety, but it also affects their perception of safety, particularly if you go out to some of those dark tube stations that are overground, particularly out on the east end of the district line, for example. People actually don't feel safe without staff on the station. So how are we going to engage with communities? Where's the in? Well, it's very simple, isn't it? We're a membership organisation, as are our fellow trade unions. Our members live in communities. The transport job cuts will affect the services to our members' communities. All they have to do is speak to their friends and neighbours and the people in their community groups, and if necessary to the school outside the school gates. We already are a community organisation. We just need to get our members to think about how they can act to influence the communities in which they live. Just to talk a little about the model we're evolving in terms of the way we're going to operate. We've looked at some of the American experience. The Industrial Areas Foundation, some of you will have heard of, and the Acorn organisation. They have two very separate models, but they're very about mobilising communities to achieve power. The IAF model is very much about you go around and you collect a dozen or so community leaders, church leaders, school heads, teachers, trade union branch officers and so on. And you get them to sign up, and then you assume that they will deliver their members for your campaign. That's one model. The Acorn model is also known as the door knocking model. They sign up people one at a time, but going door to door saying, if you're concerned about this, do you want to get involved? So we looked at the models. We looked at the London Citizens Organisation. They're an organisation that are clearly effective in some ways. They're an organisation that, quite frankly, trade unions have found very difficult to work with over a number of years. We've actually had to sit down with them. We've got a non-aggression pact with London Citizens, which we thought was quite an achievement. They've said, we will do nothing to undermine what you're doing, and if any of our affiliates want to get involved, that's fine, we'll not do anything to deter them, but at this moment in time, we're not going to promote involvement in your initiative. So it's a non-aggression pact, and we'll see how that develops. We looked at, in particular, in the States, in New York, the strap hangers campaign is probably one of the earliest examples. It's been around for about 30 years. Strap hangers, you know, if you're on the tube, and in the old days there used to be a strap you would hang on. Apparently that's where the name comes from in the States. In America, the bus riders campaigns are quite interesting as well, because actually it's poor communities, predominantly ethnic minority communities, that ride the buses. Because when you come into the city, you're either on the freeway in your car, or you can afford the train. So there's very much an experience in America, which we've explored and looked at, of actually seeing transport cuts as being an attack on working class communities. And certainly where I live in Hackney, it's very much the case, and we rely very much on the buses. And when they cut those bus subsidies, we're likely to see something like 1/3 of the buses in Hackney come off the road and be parked up in some bus graveyard. So we're exploring those issues of class and public service in terms of public transport. We looked at the 38 Degrees website. You probably know what that is. I hope some people do. And it's something that actually gets hundreds of thousands of people to click to say they want the NHS to stay as a public service and then want profit, or they, don't privatise the forest and so on. There's a real criticism of that though, because it actually, although it can generate a huge number of clicks, it doesn't necessarily mean that people do anything away from their desktop, away from their computer. And we looked at the Hope Not Hate campaign, the Searchlight anti-fascist organisation, which we've taken very much as a good inspiration about a national organisation with limited resources, able to engage with a wide base of support, but also to undertake focused initiatives as and when necessary. So that's the background. What have we done? We've recruited, at this moment in time, 2 community organisers. One is going to be responsible for a national focus through a website. They're effectively someone with a research background in public transport and so on. And we're going to try and campaign a national focus through a website with what we call offline campaigning. And the local activities, such as when London Midland announced just 3 weeks ago that they were losing 130 jobs off the platforms, that we're engaging now with the rail user groups, the community organisations, the councillors and the local papers up and down that line. And so that's the second focus. So it's a dual approach. We are building alliances with community groups. There are hundreds of rail user groups up and down the country. They are instinctively going to support a campaign to keep staff on the platforms and to resist making passengers pay increased fare. The other thing we're trying to do is to build trade union partners. We're in some fairly in-depth discussions with our colleagues at the RMT, and that they will make their own decision through their internal democratic process, but we are hoping that they will come on board and fund additional community organisers. There are a number of other trade unions that are beginning to think about how they can mobilise communities to add to their industrial campaigns to defend jobs and services, and we're going to enter into discussions with them in the hope that we can learn from each other as these issues evolve. So just to conclude then, our view very much is that we can learn from the community organising models that have existed in the States for many years. Actually, they exist in the States primarily because the trade union movement in the States is so weak, people have to find other ways of challenging these things. Well, we want to use those ideas, strategies and tactics here, not because we're abandoning the concept of trade union power, but because we want to incorporate that into what we do and be part of building trade union power. We do believe we can generate leverage through partnerships with communities, but primarily we must engage as equals. It's no good saying, we will be running a campaign, join if you want. We really do need to sit down with people and talk about shared aspirations, shared concerns, and actually shared leadership of these local initiatives. And perhaps quite importantly, we really do expect that we will see a new layer of people emerging from our membership who are responsive to this type of campaigning initiative, who we have yet to attract in to become reps and so on, and part of our industrial base. And we're hoping to see cross-fertilisation as people become active in their communities, seeing it as being part of their trade union membership, that they become more open to becoming actively engaged in the trade union on the more industrial side. So, and finally, of course, where we do win, and there are times when we're winning at the moment, it's a tough environment out there. Much of what we're winning is things are nowhere near as bad as they would have been if we hadn't put up a fight, but that's still a win in the current climate. Where we do win, it does build union strength, it does build loyalty from our members to their unions. So that's my presentation.
Thank you.